Remember, views and opinion of the show are not necessarily those of the staff and management of WFNL. Let's talk about it. Good morning. Good morning, Melissa. You are live on the air.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
I am wonderful. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. It's a Saturday. It's bright and early, so happy to be here. Honored to be here actually, and happy to give out updated information about the water and everything that's going on here in the city of Flint with the pipe replacement and restoration and some of the lawsuits. Not so much the money lawsuit, not the damages lawsuit, because there's not a lot of information available with that, unfortunately. But when it comes to the pipes and getting our yards, driveways, sidewalks fixed, I will hopefully have some answers for folks this morning.
Go ahead, take it away for the next 58 minutes. All yours, Melissa. Just remember, this is the gospel station, WFL. I love you, dear.
No problem. Yeah, no. So, basically, we are going in. I mean, we're well past year 9. April 25th was the 9-year anniversary of the kickoff of the Flint water crisis, when the state of Michigan had the city of Flint switch over to the Flint River. So we all know the story. Basically, they were trying to put us on a privatized pipeline, which is the Carigandi Water Authority, KWA, also now known as Genesee County Drain Commission Water, or GCDC. They like to throw a lot of the initials out, and it gets confusing. But basically, due to decisions of the state, and then the EPA didn't step in to stop it, and the city was under state control. And we ended up with corroded water corrosive water going through the pipes, corroded our pipes in our homes, the pipes in the streets, our bodies, our appliances, basically everything, due to the untreated water. So we sued. So when I say we, I mean the Natural Resources Defense Council, and I'll refer to them as NRDC, which is a big environmental group. They protect the environment. Their job is to protect the environment and try to uphold environmental protection laws, as weak as they are. At the ACLU of Michigan, and they were a huge part in us actually going back to 2015. The Coalition for Clean Water, which was What Are You Fighting For? Which is my group, Democracy Defense League of Flint, Concerned Pastors for Social Action, Caution, several individuals, Woodside Church, Dr. Laura Sullivan, and a lot of people coming together to form the Coalition for Clean Water to try to get us back on the Detroit water system and try to stop the damage. And so we did water testing. We brought in Virginia Tech to help us with that and prove that there was a widespread corrosion problem, and there was no corrosion control. We had a lot of people supporting us, and we still do. So even though it feels like Flint's on our own, we're not. So that's kind of helpful. And we have a long history of fighting back, because we're Flint, right? So nothing's come easy really for us anyhow. So we've been fighting, and we went to court. So basically the NRDC, ACLU of Michigan, Concerned Pastors for Social Action, and then the type of federal Safe Drinking Water Act lawsuit requires a impacted individual, which was, we chose myself because I'd had a lot of water tests done, and I'm, pretty loud if anybody knows me. So we filed on behalf of the residents of Flint it's an enforcement lawsuit. So it's not for money. We did get damages, but not monetary damages. And you'll hear numbers like 97 million for the pipes, plus several million for bottled water and filters to keep the pods open, to keep things like the Flint Water Medicaid expansion for kids up to age 21 going, as well as other programs that were supportive. But the whole point of the lawsuit was to force the city and state to come into compliance with the Safe Drinking Water Act and lead and copper rule. So that actually meant replacing the lead and galvanized steel service lines, because we had people in the city of Flint that had there was a gentleman not too far from where I lived that had over 20,000 parts per billion of lead in his water. 5,000 is hazardous waste. And 15 is the action level. That's not the safe level. To make it clear for everybody, it's not the safe level. It's the action level, meaning if 90% of the tests that were done by the city and state averaged over this, meaning 10% of people that were getting super poisoned could be thrown out because, again, the laws haven't been updated in decades. Then the city and state would have to do something about corrosion control. So the action level means nothing for safety, okay? The only safe level of lead is 0 for any age group, pets, all of that, okay? It's 0. Anybody that tells you differently, send them my way and we'll have a conversation. So basically, we were forcing them to go to change the pipes at no cost to the residents. We won a lot in 2016 we filed a preliminary injunction as more information was coming about that would force the state to deliver bottled water and install filters in every single home in Flint to every single residence. The state refused, said it was a Herculean effort, even though Flint groups made up of Flint residents, impacted residents, poisoned people, we were doing it ourselves. Yes. Oh, and the air quality as well. We'll talk about that too. Yeah. Just right now, what's interesting also, so pause on the water. As for the air quality, we are currently under an advisory. What's not funny, but a little bit infuriating is last week and then again this week, I had alerts pop up from the Weather Channel on my phone and my personal laptop. I was playing Minecraft with my kids. I'm terrible at it, but it popped up as a warning telling me that basically all of Michigan is under a serious air pollution. It basically says that the air pollution due to the wildfires in Canada is in the unhealthy level. And what that means is it's not just folks who have, like myself, who have asthma or COPD or who have sensitivities to the air quality. Basically especially when how hot it was last week, when our kids were out there playing, there was a lot of kids that passed out. There were ambulances for folks because they had trouble breathing in the heat and humidity. And even this past week that wasn't as hot was hard to breathe. I was walking up my steps saying, man, I really need to go to the gym because I can't even make it up my steps. I can't breathe. Well, then I found that the warning popped up on my phone saying, hey, you shouldn't be outside doing any kind of exertion, any kind of like gassing up your car, mowing your lawn, any kind of things like that, because the air quality is bad. It says in caps, unhealthy. I got a question for you. Sure. Who alerted you? Who alerted me? Not anybody that's in charge. So we have these government agencies and we have these elected officials. No, what I'm saying, far you said you got to alert through your phone. Oh no, it was basically in the corner where I have like AccuWeather.com. That's on my phone. So it was not emergency. Oh no. So that's where I got frustrated. So not too long ago with the boil water advisory, everybody remembers Super Bowl weekend when we didn't have water or we had to boil our water. For the people that found out. And of course for Flint, we need to filter and then boil because, we got lots of problems. I went off because the city didn't alert folks unless you were on their Facebook page, which I don't follow the City of Flint's Facebook page. But a lot of people don't. You wouldn't have known that there was any, I thought, honestly, I had a shut off notice. So I thought they shut my water off. I'm like, oh, well, they shut my water off. It was due the 14th and, they shut my water off early. I'm like, well, they really hate me. Not surprised. But a lot of people didn't know. We're drinking, brushing their teeth, we doing the normal things. So I threw a fit and there was a group of us. So I also work at Flint Rising and we said, what is going on? We paid to boost all these posts to warn people, please filter and then boil. And then I went on the news and said, why do residents have to tell each other? Why is it on us to warn each other? So then shortly after that, then the city comes out and said, okay, we're going to do this code red. You can sign up, to get text alerts and everything. And then there were alerts and phone calls for things like the city council meetings changing. And the mayor had his Easter egg hunt. But yet here again, I get this random, alert on my phone just having to pop up through, scrolling on my phone and then on my personal laptop trying to load Minecraft, and it came up in the bottom bar as a little triangle. I'm like, what's this? Instead of using this code red emergency. So it is 2023 as far as I'm aware. And there's no reason why you can't do targeted text messages. I mean, yeah, they're annoying, but we all get them, right? But it would be nice if these text messages weren't like, hey, here's an Easter egg hunt. Or it could be, hey, take extra precautions, because Michigan has the highest number of kiddos with asthma. And that's just kids. And then here we have this Ajax plant that a lot of the activist groups, public health officials have said this is going to cause permanent damage to our air quality in Flint. And we've already got it bad enough, right? So we've got bad water and soil, and now we've got bad air, and nobody's.
That's why, because I saw you made a post about the air
Yeah.
quality. That's why I asked you that. 'Cause I'm looking
Yeah,
at
so
that.
if you're friends with me on Facebook or any of the pages that I manage, like What Are You Fighting For and Flint Rising, you'll see that I said, attention residents of Flint and Michigan who breathe air. So it's, that's everybody. That's our pets. That's everybody. You shouldn't be breathing this in. And it's funny because I didn't even understand like why my dogs didn't even want to be outside, and I'm like, well, you're being lazy. Get
Right.
go back outside and play. But I'm like, oh no, you shouldn't be breathing this in, because I'm busy. I'm a social worker. So I'm not following the city of Flint. But then also we found out. So I spoke to Dr. Kent Key, who is a public health official and over at MSU, and he said, "Hey, I saw your post. I'm like, what is going on? Why is nobody doing anything about this?" So then he had to call the city, and the city, he spoke to Lottie, and Lottie was like, "Oh, I didn't know," and then that's how something got posted. But again, why does it fall on the residents? And why did it happen to be if I didn't open my little laptop and, try to get it to boot up Minecraft and try to get beat in a game by my kids? If that didn't happen, I wouldn't have known.
But we got an emergency system for that.
We do.
That's why I
Well, and that's the thing is, it was a big announcement just a few months ago about the Code Red system, and people got text messages and phone calls about meeting movings. And again, what blows my mind is the mayor's Easter egg hunt. I'm looking at that. I'm like, how is this an emergency? But then all of a sudden, you have this massive air quality problem, and it's some of the worst air quality that we've had in quite some time, and nobody's telling anybody anything. So again, the pipes aren't being replaced. People aren't getting filters. They're not getting their water tested. We're not being told that the air is bad. We're not being told to stay inside. We're not being told how to be safe in our homes. We're having to tell one another and then Google it to figure it out. And once again, it falls onto the residents, the directly impacted people, and we have to do all the work. And that's where we're still at, and why it's been 9 years and the pipes aren't replaced. It was supposed to be done in 2020, January 2020, and it's still not done. And then we were sitting here with bad air, and we're like, oh well, I guess we'll tell our neighbors like we had to do with the bad water.
Yep, we got bad air, bad water first. Now it's bad air. Like,
right,
I don't know what's next.
Right, and we have to stay in our homes, but I like to go outside because my water in the house is bad. Because half the time, especially if I'm doing laundry or something, my water is going to smell like sulfur or feet or dirt or the chemicals. When I get a bloody nose, it smells like this all of a sudden bleach bomb, and I know that bleach smell is not chlorine. It's the cancer causing disinfection byproduct of chlorine is what that bleach smell is. And so then I know, I'm like, well, I'm smelling a carcinogen, and I would like to go outside to get out of this, and I'd like to open my windows to air the house out.
So how can the mayor go on to say the water is the water good for consumption?
No. Here's the thing. Everybody with any kind of let me reword this. Those who care about public health and the health of the residents will tell you straight out. There was a water summit a couple weeks ago, and one of the attorneys from the NRDC flew in to make sure that the information was accurate and clear. Please use filters. 1 year passed when the last pipe is replaced, because it's not just this neighborhood, that neighborhood. We're all in the same system. So as construction is happening, it is shaking it up across the system. And we have a very, very unstable infrastructure, which we all know this because we have all the main breaks and ruptures. So as long as, another point being is the city and county are blending our water.
Wow.
They're blending two different water sources. We can't get accurate information on it. I've been asking since August of 2021 when I accidentally found out about this blending plan. I've been asking for data, like who owns the valve? How do we know that it's 95% Detroit, 5%, Genesee County water? Did you test it first? The answer is no, by the way. They did not test to see what happened when you blend two different. And yes, they both come from Lake Huron, but Detroit's is treated at the source, and Genesee County's is piped in untreated and then treated in Genesee County. So it's two different. It's treated two different places at two different times and two different methods.
Wow.
And then it's blended together, and nobody bothered to test it until I was my annoying loud self and said, "What are you doing?" Nobody even bothered to test it to see what it was going to do to our already damaged infrastructure. Now, one of the things with the previous administration with Mayor Weaver, we had several talks saying we don't want to switch the water until, down the line maybe, but until all of this damaged infrastructure is replaced. And I'm talking not just the service lines, but the mains that we can see continue to rupture, and the interior plumbing, appliances, and fixtures. Everything that had gotten eaten up by the water needs to be replaced. Otherwise, what little life is left in them is going to be damaged by playing and experimenting with this water. It's just like 2014 all over again.
And that's what I was going to ask you. It's like they doing an experiment in Flint.
And the thing is that so I went to the EPA and threw my fit. I mean, I asked for help, and they said, "Well, there's not really any regulations on blending." I'm like, "Cool." So we're going back to outdated laws, non-existent laws that should be there to protect public health. But what's happened is they've politicized public health, and we all saw it with COVID, which is why Flint folks were not surprised with how badly that went, because they put politics and profit over the people and over public health and over facts. And they don't give us the information we need to make the decisions to protect our own families, on our own lives, and our own homes. And that's why things are so bad. So, and again, they're making all these decisions about us without us, so they don't have our input. So the people who don't even live here, who are in charge.
But couldn't it be they looking at the citizens? Just look. Let's go back to the voter turnout.
Oh,
when you getting 13%, I might be off, maybe 10 voter turnout. So the people that's calling the shots can look at it like they don't care.
Yeah.
So
they label us disposable people. They're like, well, they're not going to vote me out anyway. So, and they're not going to donate to my campaign. They're just poor people. What do they know? They don't care. But then they go out of their way to suppress the vote. They go out of their way to call, especially Black folk, because I work as a social worker. Most of my clients are Black folks who live in Flint, because I work for the Flint Water Care Supports Coordination. So it's and I work with a lot of disabled folks. So on election day they're getting calls telling them that to go the next day to. So I reported that to the Attorney General's office, and don't get me started on that subject about the Attorney General and the fact that nobody's being held accountable. If I poison one person, just one, I'm going to be in jail. You'll never see me again, which would be a relief to some people, but so I'm trying to behave. But 100,000 people. And they're continuing to do it. They're continuing to experiment on Flint. But the thing is they act like we're not important and we're disposable. But whatever they end up doing to us, they experiment with us, they then do to the rest of the country.
Right.
So as goes Flint, so goes the world. Is what I was told. And it's happening because we're helping folks in East Palestine. But then before the train derailment, there was, there's Milwaukee, there's Chicago, there's Philadelphia, there's all these cities that have Baltimore, all these cities that have a water crisis. Right. And because of mismanagement or just greed, trying to clear people out for, gentrification, whichever, reason they have, it's never in the interest of the people. As long as they can get away with it in Flint, with all the attention that we've had,
right,
they're going to do it everywhere. And so that's why it's so important that we stand up and push back and fight, because that needs to be part of this playbook they're replicating. But it's the same thing, even though it's a train derailment. We went down there in February, and one of the first things was they were trying to say it wasn't in the water, and they're all wells down there. And I'm like, well, I don't know if you know this, but air and soil, they do meet. Contaminants go up in the air, they come down in the soil, they soak into the soil, they go into the water table and the aquifer, and that goes into your wells. And then like a month later, they're like, oops, all the wells are contaminated. We're like, duh. I mean, it's just common sense. But they try to do what they did in Flint. They're like, try to minimize it. They're like, well, especially when they just want to talk about lead. And they don't even want to talk about that. But they want to grasp onto lead. They're not talking about bacteria or all the cancer-causing disinfection byproducts, the cancer clusters here, and all of the other, the people who died from Legionnaires and quote unquote bacterial pneumonia. That's still happening, by the way. We're in 2023, and every summer we've had Legionnaires outbreaks, but they don't want to tell anybody because they use the excuse, well, if we tell people, they're going to get mad. Well, the first thing, yeah, we might get mad, but then at least we know how to protect ourselves and know that there's a problem. Going back to 2014, we failed the first safe drinking water test 2.5 weeks after they switched the water. We failed. And they could have just said, hey, look, we're sorry. It didn't work out as planned. Here's what you need to do to protect yourself. Get some filters. Don't drink the water without doing this first. And yeah, we'd be mad and we'd be like, you pay for the filters. Why is my bill so much? And I have to pay for this. But you know what? We probably have some folks that we love very much still alive.
Because I'm just reading this question from Cynthia Hayes. She was like,
sure.
She said, "Can you answer this question? How many families and children have actually been affected by this disgusting water crisis, and how do they feel about everything that has been going on with the settlement, and what are their hardships, and how successful have they been in surviving, or maybe unable to maintain their own personal health, resources, or overwhelmingly just feeling betrayed by our disgraceful systematic political party?"
100%. So there was 100,000 people, because you have to remember, there were a lot of people that didn't live in Flint, but they worked here.
Yeah.
Students, especially, international students, transfer students, things like that. So there's 100,000 impacted people. Mm-hmm. And some people, maybe they got lucky. Maybe their bodies could fight it off. Maybe they didn't ingest as much. Maybe they didn't shower and absorb as much. But I know people like me. I was going to the gym 4 to 5 days a week. Mm-hmm. I was healthy, 36, 35, something like that. Wow. Healthy. I had dark brown hair. I was going to the gym. I was working, raising kids, all that stuff. No healthy. I was taking vitamins. Right. And I was seeing a nutritionist actually to make sure I was eating right to work out. And I wanted my muscles, because my tattoos, I wanted to look good. So I was seeing a nutritionist, and all of a sudden I started getting sick in 2014. But I was drinking 1 gallon to 1.5 gallons of water a day.
Flint water?
A Flint water, because my water was clear. The people who had orange and brown water got lucky. And it's for people who aren't aware. The orange and brown water is iron corrosion. It's not good for you. And it actually breeds bacteria, but it's not as dangerous if you drink just that as the clear water. And people out there thought, oh, you guys are dumb. You dumb Flint people were drinking brown, orange water. No, those folks got lucky because they knew that something was wrong. Unfortunately, the city and state said, well, it's just their house. It's just their neighborhood. And our water was clear. And I'm like, oh, I had just paid a $500 water bill. And I'm like, oh, I'm not paying for bottled water.
Hold on. You just said the city and state said it was all right.
Yeah. Yep. The city and state both said it was fine. We did, in July of 2015, we did a Detroit to Flint march. We did 70 miles in 7 days. And we had these amazing people who marched. I couldn't do it because my health was already shot. Was already having seizures and autoimmune disorders and gastro, all my interior plumbing was destroyed. My kids were already having really bad health problems, so the list goes on. But there are people that were able to do this whole march to talk about water justice and the emergency management and the loss of democracy and the loss of clean water. Right. And we went from Detroit. We stopped in, Hamtramck. We stopped in Highland Park. We stopped in Pontiac, and all these different cities that had been dealing with emergency management and bad water. Mostly the massive water shutoffs too, because that was happening in Detroit. They were going block by block trying to push people out. And I warned them. I said, if you keep shutting the water off, you're going to have water sitting stagnant, like what was happening here in Flint, and the water's going to go bad. And that's exactly what happened. So, which by the way, my background is not in science. I worked for radio stations, and my background's in PR and marketing, and I was a band manager and tour manager. So now I have to run circles around people with water chemistry and science. And unfortunately, I'm a female. So that has run into some interesting things, like me getting sued for $3 million because I said, in 2018, our water was still messed up. Because at the bottom line, as long as these pipes, appliances, and fixtures that are corroded, crumbling, unstable, the mains, everything, as long as they are touching our water is not going to be safe for everyone. And it's not going to be stable. It could be safe 1 minute, and then a truck drives over, or the weather changes, temperature changes, something gets shaken up, and then bam. Or when they're blending our water, there's a change. So then here we are. So no, until this all gets replaced, there's no way anybody can positively say that the water is going to be safe, especially not safe for everybody, because we still have people with lead and galvanized steel service lines and interior plumbing, because apparently they think that, okay, well, we can just replace the service line and everything will be just fine. Absolutely not. That's one piece of the puzzle. One piece. And it's a major piece. We made history, but it's not
that's
enough.
The point, not to cut you off, that's the point I'm trying to make. See how you saying, like, how many more people need to die? How we got a cancer cluster study.
Yeah.
Understand that? That's like,
well, I got hit in 2021, and the thing is that I've been speaking with geneticists and toxicologists and all kind of people trying to figure out why are our bodies so weird now. Like, I don't know if anybody else has had like a specialist, because I've got a bunch of them, look at them and say, I don't know why it's acting this way. I don't know why this is happening this way or this way. So with my cancer, it acted completely abnormally, and it took 2 surgeons in 6 hours to fix and put organs where they were supposed to be. So there was a whole lot of things that are weird, but then we have like over 30,000 like genetic markers, right? Like in our DNA. And water, like it's well known that lead leads to autism, because what happened in children. So what happens is these heavy metals, these carcinogens, these bacteria, things like this. And we're going to see this with COVID too. Major illnesses like this viruses can change how your body reacts to things, your immune system, and it can flip off switches in your DNA that should be on and then flip things on that should be off. And that's why we're seeing cancer clusters and weird things like that.
No, but that's what I'm saying. You said Art had to go out there to fight to get that up here. That's the point I'm saying.
Well, they're not. Like, and so the thing is that, okay, so we went to DC, we've gone to Congress and Senate and the state house and all this stuff. And what I was told to my face by somebody in our in our state house, well, if we fix Flint, then we're going to have to fix every poison city. So that right there is the reason why we have to fight for everything. They're not going to come up we were teaching this in these other cities, if they come up and offer you something,
right,
that's covering for something else, and that ain't right. And that's why the people need to be at the table when these decisions are made. That's why we need people we trust in office, and if not, we get them booted out. Right now, I just signed a thing, and I've been working with Sierra Club and a bunch of other environmental groups, because our state legislature, people who are Democrats that are supposed to help us, like our state rep, just signed legislation to approve additional mining, which is going to be completely damaging to our water, to our air. And then what's worse is inside this bill, it says that the mining companies are the ones that are going to have to watch to see if they're poisoning folks. And they're going to have to report it if they poison people. I'm like, wait a second. You're letting the polluters police themselves? Well, that's what's been happening in Flint. The city and state have been in charge of the recovery, which is why we don't have one.
Right.
And so, so we've got our state reps, instead of pushing, updated water protections and updated Safe Drinking Water Act laws on the state law and pushing for federal, they're doing these things to allow polluters to make money off of poisoning us. Like, hello, we've been dealing with that. Knock it off. And so I think COVID was a big window for these folks to get away with not doing what was necessary. We've got elected officials that hide. We've held the city of Flint in violation of our Safe Drinking Water Act lawsuit, the pipe replacement lawsuit, 5 times. Right. And actually, we filed a motion a few weeks ago to hold the mayor's office, the mayor, city administration, in contempt of court, because we went back and filed the motion at fall of last year, and the judge in February said, yeah, you're right, and gave the city deadlines and told them exactly what they needed to do. And the excuses didn't matter. They were always blaming somebody else in court, and it was the judge had enough and said, you need to do this, this, this. Well, the city failed May 1st. With the first set of things, the first set of, I just basically identifying, because they can't even tell us how many homes still need restoration. At first it was 2,000, then 6,000, maybe 10,000. I'm like, out of 27,000 holes that have been dug, oh my God. And so then we're hearing misinformation. The mayor actually gave a presentation at that water summit, and it was wrong. He said that there was no restoration crews before 2019. I'm like, that's false. And then he wanted to blame the previous administration, and it just sounded like Trump blaming Obama for everything. I'm like, you're in charge now. Fix it. Just do what the judge is telling you to do. Do what you agreed to do. And I mean, there was the same director of public works there for the longest time, with the both administrations. And then also the same city attorneys have been doing this lawsuit since 2015. And then the state, however, the state who used to be just harsh on the city, anything the city messed up. And again, at the beginning, mistakes were understandable because we were the first city to win this. So Flint residents were the first to win a case like this.
Right.
And we were the first city to do a major project like this. So there was some learning curves, right? And then the state brought in AECOM and that made things worse. And so there was a lot of learning curves, but we had a groove going, and if you watch the Scripps piece, you can see the pipe replacement. We were going and people were getting their yards fixed. People were getting, it was good. It wasn't great, but it was moving forward. And we were moving towards checking that off the list so we could focus on getting federal funding for the mains and interior plumbing. But then no, it all of a sudden hit the brakes. In 2020, the pipe replacement and restoration program was shut down. And yes, we let there be like a 6-month window for COVID, even though I didn't understand with the property restoration because COVID wasn't in the grass. I didn't think. But yeah, no. And so then after April of 2020 through all of 2021 and all the way up until September, past Labor Day of 2022, there was no digging. No pipes being excavated, no pipes being checked, no pipes being replaced, no restoration being done. Why? As our pipes just got worse. And then in the middle of it in 2021, they started experimenting on our water again. And that's when you'll see the 90th percentile, which again, there's issues with the testing. It's not good enough, but even with it not being good enough, our 90th percentile had dropped to 3 parts per billion. But then right after they started blending, it went up to 7, which is terrible. Then it went up to 10. In this last 6 months, it was at 9. And again, 0 is the only safe level. That means that there's a lot of testing locations that are showing lead. The scary part is that we're seeing locations that had tested previously 0 parts per billion pretty consistently to now having lead. That means unstable. That means fluctuating. That means unsafe for everybody because, again, the testing is a snapshot in time and we don't know what's going on. We still have people testing in the hundreds and then there were tests in the thousands of parts per billion because the pipes are still bad. So the water is going to be bad. That's just common sense. And that's just bad pipe. It could be, heaven's perfect spring water. And which it's not. It's, once again, an experiment that's just awful. And that's why we're paying such high water bills because we're paying for these 2 pipelines, which is so unnecessary. But Genesee County needs our money to not go bankrupt. That's a whole other story because it's their pipeline that we paid for.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. So it's all about money. All of it is about money, political power, and none of it is about the health and safety of the residents, which is why we put these folks in office, was not so they could profit and make money and, advance their own selves. It's to protect us.
See, that's the question that I'm trying to get. I hear everything that you're saying.
You're right. I hate this because I feel like I'm always the bearer of bad news, but it's what it is. And I'm tired of hearing all of these sugar-coated false things saying, oh, my favorite, which means I hate it the most, is, well, the Flint water is the most monitored water in the country. Well, okay, I can look at Canada right now and be like, well, it's the most monitored forest fire in the world.
Right.
But it's still a forest fire.
Right.
That just looking at it and monitoring it does not mean it's okay.
Right.
And that's also garbage because people don't know that they can get their water tested. Part of the lawsuit of the NRDC, not the money settlement, because, as the lady asked before, that's not even moved anywhere for us, for people. And we need to hold Veolia and Land, the 2 engineering firms, accountable too. So that's still going on in court, as well as the EPA and federal government. So there's still defendants out there. So the $600 million is not enough at all, but it's also not the only part. So we still have, that going on. But then the pipe replacement lawsuit, it's not done. And there's no reason that it's not done, except for every single home that's not done saves the state thousands of dollars out of that $97 million pot that was for pipe replacement. And again, the city didn't get $97 million. What happens is each home that's done has to be checked and then invoiced to the state. So the state doesn't pay unless the property's done. So if you're missing 10,000 homes that haven't been restored, that's a lot of money. So again, it's about money and it's not about what we need is for everybody to get it is and it's unfair. It's not right. We're all tired. We're sick. We're over it. Hate the word water.
9 years later, though.
9 years later. 9 years later. But it's basically like 2014 and 2015 all over again. But you know what? We already know how to do it. So at least there's that. So we need people to go. So our lawsuit says until 1 year past the last pipes replaced, you get 2 free lead and copper tests done every 6 months until that happens. And the last pipe has not been replaced. Same thing with filters. So people need to know that if you go down to the city or if you call the public health navigators, which changes a lot, you can go to City Hall, the best bet's between 9 and 4 to go get that done. So just the whole thing is, I know that everybody wants to be normal. Yeah. I would, I just paid $251 on my water bill. I sure would like that water to be coming through, to not stink, to not ruin my stuff.
But that's what's crazy. You still paying a water bill. The city of Flint.
We never stopped paying a water bill.
That is unhealthy.
That's hurting me. That's hurting my kids. That's hurting my pets. Like everybody in my family. And that's another thing too. Please use bottled water to make your coffee, to make your ice cubes, to brush your teeth. Because I have in a 6-month period, so I've had, I think, 17 cavities, which I had none up until I was 37, 38 years old. And then I was given a speech in 2016. Reverend Jackson and Rainbow Push had given me an award, and I was speaking at the International Women's Convention in front of some amazing people, thousands of people. And I'm talking about the impacts to, women and our daily lives and everything. And then my tooth breaks and starts bleeding down my face. And it was so gross. I'm in front of everybody. I'm like, oh, and our teeth are falling out of our head because lead replaces calcium in your bones and your teeth. Because it's a similar element.
That's the point that I'm making. Flint is just not that. It's the health issues afterwards.
That's the thing
too. How are you gonna fix some people that still gonna have health problems? We all gonna die regardless. But
right.
To be, this.
We shouldn't die faster because somebody wanted to make some money.
Right. That's the point.
So what I always encourage, and I've given speeches in front of churches talking about my colonoscopies. The biggest thing is shame. Because nobody wants to talk about our health problems, because generally they try to say, well, it's your health, your responsibility.
Right.
I need people to know we didn't do this to ourselves.
Right.
The reason, I know in my head that the reason I'm sick is because I was going to the gym, drinking a gallon and a half of water a day as my nutritionist instructed, because I was working out very hard. Right. And I was using my clear, not discolored tap water. And that's because I was told that it was safe, and I was paying so much for it, I couldn't afford bottled water. So I did what I was supposed to do. Now, we can talk about moral injury as well. I handed my kids, instead of pop, instead of sugary juices, I didn't want any hyper kids, I gave my kids water. Now they've got executive functioning issues, they've got learning disabilities, they've got speech problems, they have ADHD, they have basically no vitamin D, they have impaired immune systems. And also they didn't grow, they're not able to grow right because lead settled into their growth plates and closed them prematurely. So as they hit their 6'3" selves, their muscles and joints didn't grow with their bones because the growth plates closed, because heavy metals settled into them. So they had to go to physical therapy to have their muscles and joints stretched out with their bone growth.
Now that's the point. Now, when you looked at the Scripps interview too, you see that lady had a story. How many stories do we gotta have that? I'm just saying, when you look at, we got a Democratic governor.
Yeah. It was supposed to be Justice for Flint. Where is that? Or the Attorney General. Where's that? You ran on Justice for Flint and settling these lawsuits and doing what's right for people. Right. As soon as the Attorney General got in, she still was taking us to court. March of 2020, we had to go to the Michigan Supreme Court after it got kicked back from the federal Supreme Court, where they said, we're not going to hear the state's arguments. The people of Flint deserve their day in court. And this is for the money and the class action and the damages lawsuits. Then we had to go to the state Supreme Court. And the state, their excuse was, well, Melissa Mays was out there protesting in 2015, so she had superior knowledge of the water. Now, my little ego here loved to hear superior knowledge of anything. But what they said was, she should have known sooner that we were lying to them. And so she should have sued in October of 2014. So basically they were saying, here's our crime of lying to y'all about the water. You should have figured it out sooner that we were lying to you about the quality of the water, and you should have sued sooner. So statute of limitations. Thankfully, the Michigan Supreme Court said that's garbage. One of the justices actually asked the state right there, saying, okay, so every time the government says something, basically people need to go get an attorney. Just assume that you're lying. And I'm like, well, that's probably true. But that's the kind of junk we've been dealing with to get to the pieces where we are. So if you take a step back and look at it, we're not far enough. We need money to rebuild our homes, to get therapists for our kids and ourselves, because we've all been through trauma. All of us have been through trauma, living through this. And they say, oh, well, that's why people don't trust the water, because they're traumatized. First of all, that's part of it. But second of all, it's because y'all haven't changed the pipes. Third of all, it's because y'all been lying to us, and never once have you done any of the promises you said you do. You said you were sorry, and the buck stops with me, right, Governor Snyder? Well, you spent how much of our tax dollars fighting a $1,000 fine, which is basically a parking ticket. His suits, when he went to court, cost more than that. But yet nobody will take responsibility. All these people still have 6-figure jobs, except the lady that got fired. Then she sued and said, why was I the only one that got fired? And she got a 6-figure settlement. So all these other people are getting money, going about their days. No big deal. We have a mayor that doesn't show up. I'm just sitting here like, where are you at? Where are you at? You should be here talking to these people. So I think they feel that because voter turnout is low, for all of the reasons, like, hey, the comments, what I hear, because we do canvas and I do work with people directly and we do try to gather stories. What I hear, and it really hurts, is why should I vote when nothing changes? Man, that is a great reason.
I mean, no, but they, like I say, they have some points, but then look what we doing. We going right to the state and ask them for help, regardless if it was Snyder, but you got Whitmer up in there. And how the people getting there? Remember the water pods?
Yeah. So here's the thing. So they turned around, and like the city still tries to say, well, because of the settlement, the pods were allowed to close early. No, sir. Stop saying that. That's false. It's you hiding behind it. Basically, the settlement said they had to keep the pods. And I'll be honest, during the mediation and during the year and a half in court, getting the $97 million promised to replace these pipes and getting these pipes replaced within 3 years, which is what the original agreement was, plus all the other stuff, was way easier than keeping bottled water, because it's the visual. It's the visual of people waiting in line to get bottled water, because then that tells the rest of the world there's still a problem.
Right.
So the lawsuit said, as long as the water quality remained, above a certain level, a certain threshold, that the pods had to stay open. So we kept them open longer. And the state even tried fighting us right away to close them, saying, oh, well, not enough people are showing up to pick the bottled water up, so it's not worth it. And we're like, that's not true. So then we sat there and started counting how many people were coming through. So again, it's always been, well, the people don't want this. The people don't care anymore. The people don't vote. So we're going to go ahead and just get away with murder then, if that's cool with y'all. But it's not. So people need to realize, yes, this is 9 years. Yes, they're treating us like we're garbage, like we're disposable people, like we don't matter. And the thing is we can't let them be right, because they're not. So we have to pull whatever strength we can pull from, whether it be caffeine, anger, rage. That's my motivations, my kids, and just my sense of, you did wrong, so make it right, but make it right right. Because I got screamed at at a town hall with the Attorney General after they dropped all the charges. And I asked them if they knew what our definition of justice was, because it doesn't seem to line up with their version of justice, because throwing out all the charges and the cases that were moving to manslaughter. And I asked if they'd talked to any residents, and then they started screaming at me, which is funny. But that's the thing. To not give up, to know that we're worth it. We deserve better than this, and we can get better than this. So what we try to do is, when we talk about the wins, it's because we have to hold on to these little wins. Because first of all, Flint is amazing. We have set the stage for all these other poison communities to fight. And yes, David and Goliath sure is, because Goliath got a whole bunch of attorneys and a whole bunch of money, our tax dollars. But we got a whole bunch of strength and the truth behind us. And all of us have an important story. All of us, what are going through.
But I get that. But how much more is it going to be? We're going to be saying 18 years later.
We're already planning for the 10-year, because, obviously this administration, city and state, doesn't seem to care. Federal as well. So what we need to do is, what got movement is getting our stories out there. Everybody, and yes, everybody's sick of hearing it. And, Congressman Kildee said that when they were pushing the Families for Flint bill, before they had to do the sit-in, basically in Congress for us, people were saying, oh, we have Flint fatigue. And he's like, you try living there. I'll tell you Flint fatigue. But
see, that's what I'm saying. When you got people in leadership even going up there, when they say they got Flint fatigue, how can you have Flint fatigue when you got people dying, people bathing in bad water? You know what I'm saying? How can you have Flint fatigue when you look how this city is being ran?
Well, it's the same thing. sweep it under the rug. Tell people they're not important so they give up and say, hey there, you poor city, majority Black and brown community. Here's your poison water. Be happy with the little bits we gave you.
But you will pop up here when it's election time.
Oh, yeah.
Even presidents.
When it's for them. Oh, yeah. Because then all of a sudden we're, political pieces and mouthpieces and all this stuff. I got in trouble for saying that in 2020, because I'm independent. I don't trust anybody that, we have the Republicans that are like, hey, poor person, here is the poison water we gave you. At least you have water. Suck it up and go die quietly somewhere. Okay, their point is clear, right? And then I've got Democrats saying, oh my God, that breaks my heart what's happening to you. Right. We're going to work to fix it. But behind my back, there's a knife going in while they're shaking the hands with the other side that's doing this to us and making sure. So I said, the GOP, the state Republicans did this to us with their decision making and taking over the city, making it clear they did this. But the Democrats have allowed this to go on. Right. So they're both responsible for this. But what happens, and what I've been trying to warn people, and what I warned people about with COVID, the minute you make it political, when they make it political, then they can finger point and nothing gets done. We get left out of it. They're like, oh, well, that's what you get for voting Democrat. Like they said it to East Palestine. That's what you get for voting for Trump. Not everybody there voted for Trump. And you know what? Not a single person voted to be poisoned. So this is where it comes to be important that people look into, especially our young people with souls, running for office. If your elected officials not doing what you need them to do, vote them out. Get them out.
But answer this question for me.
Then you run.
Right.
We need good. We actually, you know what? If the government was run by us, things would be done by now. Because again, we have these outsiders and people have no experience whatsoever making these decisions. It's awful. I'm like, I've sat there and argued with elected officials all the way up to Congress. I testified about the dangers of rolling back infrastructure spending and environmental regulations. Right. And then I had people telling me, well, environmental regulations are expensive. Do you know the health impacts when somebody's laid off from work because their company can't keep up with the don't poison the community type of thing? Right. And so my response was, do you know the health impacts of being poisoned? Do you think it's good business to poison your employees, your customer base? How does that make that make sense to me? I said, it's kind of hard when you kill off your employees, and then COVID happened, and hello, you've killed off your employees, and then you wonder why there's, distribution issues. Well, you killed off your people, right? So maybe if you would look at protecting the assets, which are your people and not your bank account. And then it's funny because everybody wants to blame one another when if you look, it's the CEOs, it's the elected officials, it's, the administrations that are profiting and doing just fine while the rest of us are struggling. We have to stop fighting one another for pennies and go after the dollars that are ours from the people that are running it. And we need to stop putting blind trust in a party or a person or a name recognition. And we need to vote people in based on their deeds and their knowledge and how much they care about the people, not profit. Right. Because again, that's what government was set for. Government was put in place to protect us from corporate interests and religious interests, things that were not government. And here we are, everything is blended, and look at the mess. And the only people making out are the CEOs and the corporations. Right.
But you got to understand, we live in a capitalistic country.
Oh, yeah. Here we are. And everybody's like, oh, you're a commie. You're this. What? No, my thing is, I would like my tax dollars that I pay a ton for. I pay more than Jeff Bezos. I pay more taxes than Elon Musk. My tax dollars, I would prefer to solve the homeless problem. Right. I would prefer to take care of our veterans. I had another veteran friend just commit suicide, and he is 44. Right. Come on now, because he's got PTSD, couldn't get treatment. And everybody's like, support the military. It's the biggest military budget in the world. I'm like, yo, that includes the veterans. My father's a veteran. You know what he can't get? Any kind of help, like any kind of health care. He's just like, well, I guess I just won't take my meds because something's wrong at the VA. This is insane. And insane's not the right word. We do not have, and I work in mental health, and they want to talk about gun legislation and, oh, well, it's a mental health problem. Well, then why have you consistently defunded mental health programs? What are you doing? No, stop doing this. Makes sense. Thank you. You're sitting here saying, oh, it's not the guns killing people. Well, it's actually the bullets, but fine. It's not the guns killing people. Guns are great. Guns are wonderful. It's mental health. Really? Well, tell me what you know about mental health, because I will run circles around that, because I have watched my clients, my friends, myself try to get help, and there's a waiting list because we don't have enough neuropsychologists, we don't have enough therapists, we don't have enough neurologists. I have to drive to Ann Arbor for a lot of my specialists because there's waiting lists here. And why is that? And also, our homeless population increased 40% in Flint. This is before we lost One Stop and we lost shelters, because people saw that Flint was getting attention and that there was a disaster here. And normal thinking is, if there's a disaster there, there's going to be support services. So people used what little money they had, got on a bus with a one-way ticket, and came to Flint to find out nothing was being done for the people who live here, let alone the folks in are the most vulnerable people. They don't care about our seniors. They don't care about these kids, and they can talk about we're pro-life. Well, what about all these poison people? What about our increases in miscarriages? What about this? Also, Flint should show you, look what happens when you poison folks for a long period of time. So maybe don't do that in other communities.
Right.
And you see it happening again and again. So the best that we can do. So.
Yeah, no, it's just political corruption, because listen, see, because I'll be hating when I see people try to act like what they see in Flint is terrible, like fire city council. Go look and see the fight they have down at the Senate and the House of Representatives.
Look at Congress. Look at these children in Congress. Look at these misbehaving folks.
That's what I'm talking about.
There's a representative that was talking about how now Congress wants to zone in on, of course, primarily Black community in D.C. and the crime in D.C. And I cannot remember her name. She's amazing. She said, we can't even focus on the crime and the criminals inside this House of Representatives.
Right.
And so until we actually practice what we preach, then it's just words. Just like every time there's a school shooting or mass shooting, thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers don't stop bullets and don't bring people back to life. And I'm sorry. So it was early on, I think 2016. It was right after the State of the State where Snyder had said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Flint. I'm sorry this happened. The buck stops with me. Which is why, of course, he's for years spent millions of our tax dollars to defend himself against what he did. But he said, I'm sorry. So I was doing an interview with a certain news station that, and it was a live interview, so they couldn't cut me off, which is just awesome. My favorite kinds. They couldn't chop up what I said. In the middle of it, so it was your same general, when did you notice the water being bad? What's the health like? Blah, blah, blah. When did you get rashes and stuff? And that's fine. That's the human impact of it. But then this woman, this talking head said, well, your governor just said he was sorry. Isn't that enough for you? Well, luckily, even though Miss Gwen was worried, I can control my mouth, and there should be a separate movie or book for the things that pop in my head that don't come out.
Right.
Because what I did was I just looked at her and I was like, I'm sorry doesn't bring people back from the dead.
Right.
I'm sorry doesn't remove the lead from my kids' brains and bones. I'm sorry doesn't fix the women who've miscarried. I'm sorry does not fix our, changed immune systems and bodies. Right. I'm sorry doesn't replace plumbing and pipes and fixtures. I'm sorry means nothing, especially if you keep doing the same thing over and over again.
Or I'm sorry watching loved ones die.
Right. I'm so sorry. Well, you could have done something about it. And that's the thing. The fact that we have an administration that likes to act like they're helpless and they don't know. Or the problem happened before I got in office. Yeah. So sure it did. You can't change the calendar, but you can fix now. And they act like they don't have any power when they have all the power. And, again, you just want to get into office and coast through and go to the next level and the next level and just, basically fail your way up to, this great job while leaving us behind. So again, the only thing I can tell people is in your own way, whether it's writing letters, whether it's, and I always encourage people to take videos of discolored water, rashes, hair loss, health problems, medications you have to take. If you put a human face on the Flint water crisis, things change. That's when Time magazine busted out, little baby boy had his rashes on the front cover.
I remember that.
And we know that wasn't the worst of it, but the world paid attention. And when they see our faces, and we aren't only just saying, here's the problem, and this is the most powerful thing. When you are speaking to people, public, elected officials, which is 100% our job to hold them accountable.
Right.
They report to us. We pay their salaries. So when we go either video them, we call them, we write letters, we send pictures, we show up in buses, pictures, human face, because it's really easy to just dismiss Flint as a whole. Be like, oh, well, Flint's fixed, Flint's over. But when you get in there and you show your face and you show what's still happening, or do what I did, I started going to these different things all over the country and taking bottles of my tap water. I would fill it up and take a video of me filling it up. And all I had to do was take the lid off and say, smell this. And then actually Michael Moore asked me to ship him a case of my bottled water,
Right.
and he used it on his Broadway show. So 1,000 shows he did, and he offered people, he's like, here, take a drink of this. But I made him promise he wouldn't let anybody drink it because there was floaties in it and it smells awful.
See,
But
me, not to cut you off, we got 2 minutes anyway. I might have took a gallon down there to the mayor himself to ask him to drink it,
You
or
should.
to the state rep, or to the council people.
Make sure you're recording it. Live stream that bad boy. Put them on notice. The times that I've been removed from meetings because that I'm supposed to be there, and I'm just a treasure, unless you're a bad person, and then I'm just annoying and awful and a pain in the side, which is fine. That's my joy. But I live stream that. I video it. I have witnesses there. You hold them accountable because, again, we're their bosses. They report to us, and they're not doing their job. So, and I, it was funny. I just realized we don't have term limits for mayor. Yeah, no, this has to stop. We need people in office that will do something. And if they don't, we don't just sit back and be like, oh, well, no, we get rid of them.
Yeah.
They need to go. They work for us. And if they don't work for us, they got to stop. And that goes all the way up to the president. And it does not anymore. It needs to stop being a party. Well, my party, this party. No, they all bad. Okay.
Yeah, you gotta, like I said, once you stop the corruption, but I don't think you can stop it. Well,
Well, there is legislation that we can push that is happening on the state and federal level to get money out of politics. Once that happens, then maybe people can end up getting back into politics. But there are bills. We just have to support them. But again, our stories, our survival, our strength, our struggle is what's going to continue. It's what got this movement in the first place. And so we have to continue to do so. So we need to start videotaping everything, posting it, sharing it with one another. No shame. We didn't do this to ourselves. So when our health is weird, we have to go get, and by the way, please, everybody take your health seriously. Please. You are important. Don't brush it off as stress like I did. Go get with your doctor. And if they're not good, you get another doctor. If they don't answer your questions, you get another doctor because you deserve it. Right. Nobody gets to talk down to you. Nobody gets to tell you deserve this or that you brought this upon yourself because you did not. We know for a fact this was done to us. So no shame in this for yourself. We shame the people responsible for fixing it. So that's my advice. And I know I didn't go into as much detail, and I'm sorry, but I will offer as much, and I load Karen up as much as I can. But Flint matters.
Well, you gotta, whenever you want to come back,
I got you. Yeah.
And thank you for showing up.
No problem.
We needed this. Thank you. Well, family, we're finna call it a day. We'll see y'all next Saturday. So stay tuned.